I never thought I'd find myself sitting here, spilling my guts on some internet forum about a mess I never saw coming. Honestly, I've always been the kind of guy who believed in loyalty, believed that once you marry someone, that's it. That's the promise. But life, as it turns out, loves to throw curveballs, especially when you're least prepared for them. It started about 6 months ago during my deployment overseas. I was gone for a long stretch, just over a year, and in that time I trusted her completely. Sarah was my wife, and I thought she was the one. We'd been together for 5 years, and I'd always felt lucky. She was beautiful, sharp, funny, everything I'd ever wanted. We talked about building a life together, planning our future, even started talking about kids. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary until I started noticing small things, calls missed, texts that seemed to disappear, her being a little more defensive whenever I brought up plans. But I brushed it off. Maybe she was just busy or tired. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. I was halfway across the world after all. I had bigger things to worry about, being in a war zone, keeping my squad alive. I couldn't afford to think about her doubts or how she might be drifting away. Then came the night before I was supposed to come home. I was exhausted, emotionally drained from a firefight that went sideways. I'd been daydreaming about her, picturing us finally reunited. I couldn't wait to kiss her, hold her, tell her I missed her so damn much. I was almost euphoric. That's when I saw it. A message pop up on my phone out of the blue. I've been careful never to check her phone, never to invade her privacy. But this was different. I needed to see. I needed to know. I unlocked the screen and saw her name, Jake, and a string of messages that made my stomach turn. They weren't just friendly banter. It was heat. Flirty, suggestive, intimate. They talked about meeting up after I got back, about the way she made him feel, about their secret plans like they were trying to hide something. My hands started shaking. I could feel every nerve ending in my body firing off. My heart pounded against my ribs like a drum. I read every word. They didn't bother hiding it. It was right. There, plain as day. Sarah had betrayed me. She'd cheated on me with my best friend, my best friend. I remember the air leaving my lungs, the screen flickering in the dim light of the room. My knees went weak. I sat there staring at the glow, feeling like my entire world was crumbling. How could she lie so smoothly for months? How could I have been so blind? The betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut, and all I could do was sit there, stunned, sick. I showed her the messages later that night. She everything at first, of course. She said I must been mistaken, that it was just harmless talk, that I was paranoid. But I had the proof, screenshots saved, her words burned into my mind like a scar. I couldn't believe I married a liar. How could I trust her again? How could I ever look at her the same way? I don't want to make it sound like I just woke up one day and decided to punish her. Honestly, I was devastated. But beneath that pain, something darker started to brew. I realized I couldn't let this go. I wasn't just hurt, I was pissed. And I knew somehow I had to make her pay for this betrayal. Not in a reckless way, but in a calculated, final way that would leave no doubt she'd crossed a line she couldn't come back from. The plan started forming in my head that very night. I couldn't just walk away, not without making her feel the weight of what she'd done. I had to do something that would hit her where it hurt, something that would make her regret ever stepping out of line. I thought about confronting her directly, but I knew she'd deny everything, spin some story to save her own skin. That's when the idea of revenge began to take shape, cold, precise, and complete. I'd have my justice, even if it meant turning everything she trusted upside down. I had to be smart about it. I couldn't just storm in and accuse her blindly, not without evidence. I had to play it slow, gather what I needed, and execute when I was ready. This wasn't about just hurting her. It was about making her see what her lies had cost. I wanted her to feel the pain of betrayal, the ache of losing everything she claimed to cherish, just as I had lost my trust in her. That's when the real work started. I started watching, listening, digging into her phone, her social media, anything that could give me a foothold. I wanted her to see that I was not some naive fool, blind and stupid. I was going to show her that I knew everything, and I was ready to make her pay in a way that would leave her shaking. The night I finally made my move, I knew I was crossing a line. But honestly, I didn't care. She'd broken the one promise I valued most, faithfulness. She lied, she betrayed, and she thought she could get away with it. Well, I wasn't about to let her walk free. Not anymore. The next few days were like walking through a fog. Every time I saw her, I felt this burning mix of anger and betrayal that I couldn't shake off. I kept replaying those messages in my head over and over like a sick loop. The worst part, I could still remember the way she looked, that fake smile she'd always wear like she was hiding something. Now every glance at her felt like staring at a stranger, someone I used to love but now just saw as a liar. I started paying closer attention. I'd sit on the couch while she was doing laundry or cooking, pretending to be normal, but really I was combing through her social media, her texts, waiting for the right moment. I wasn't just angry, I was calculating. I wanted it to hurt, but I also wanted proof that I could use to make her realize what she'd lost. One night, I found something that sealed my plan. She'd been hiding a new app, some kind of secret messaging platform she downloaded after I left. I got access through her phone, sneaking around when she was in the shower. There were even more messages, flirty, suggestive, and pretty damn explicit. They weren't just talking anymore. They'd started planning actual meetups, times, places. She'd even sent pictures, nothing graphic but enough to make my stomach turn. I stared at the screen, feeling cold inside. My palms went sweaty and my jaw clenched so tight I thought it might crack. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was her actively sneaking around, planning to cheat behind my back again. I could feel my mind racing. How could I have been so stupid, so naive? I was deployed, fighting for the country, and my wife was out there, hiding her lies like a damn spy. I closed her phone gently, my mind already working on how to turn this knowledge into something that would devastate her. I knew I had to be patient, methodical. I wanted her to see that I wasn't just some cuckolded husband who got played. I wanted her to realize she'd pushed me so far I was willing to burn everything down. The next step was setting the trap. I started creating a fake account on that messaging platform, pretending to be a new guy, someone she'd be tempted to talk to. I wanted her to slip up, to say something she couldn't take back. My plan was to catch her red-handed again, but this time I'd have the upper hand. I also started storing all the evidence, screenshots, saved messages, timestamps. I wanted everything documented. I didn't trust her not to erase or destroy what I had, so I kept backups, just in case. I wasn't going to give her the chance to deny or spin her way out. This one, I was going to make sure she saw that I knew everything and that her lies meant nothing anymore. Meanwhile, I kept up the pretense of normalcy. I still cooked dinner, did the laundry, made jokes, and acted like I was fine. Inside, I was anything but. My stomach was a knot of rage and disappointment. I'd never felt so betrayed in my life, not even after losing people in combat. This was worse, because this was someone I'd trusted with my heart, and she'd handed it to someone else. One evening, I confronted her about her secret app. I kept my voice calm, but the edge was there. "Who you been talking to, Sarah?" I asked, holding her phone in one hand. Her face froze, the fake smile gone, replaced with a flicker of panic. She stammered, tried to deny it, but I'd already seen enough. "Don't lie to me," I said sharply. "I know about the messages, everything. You think I'm stupid." She looked like she wanted to cry, but the only thing I felt was cold determination. It was time to put my plan into motion. I told her I'd had enough of her lies, enough of the betrayal. I told her I was going to end it, not just for myself, but for what she was doing behind my back. That's when I laid out the revenge plan, clear and simple. I told her I'd make her regret ever crossing that line. The look in her eyes told me she finally realized I wasn't bluffing. Good. I wanted her to feel the full weight of what she'd done. I kept my voice steady as I said, "You want to lie, you want to hide, fine. But I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who you really are. You might think this is about me catching you, but it's about making you understand that there are consequences for betrayal." I could see her hands trembling, her face trying to stay composed, but I knew better. I saw her crack. That night, I stayed up, finishing my preparations. I was going to send the evidence to her closest friends, family, maybe even post it online if I had to. I wanted her to feel exposed, vulnerable, and ultimately powerless. I wasn't just seeking revenge, I was seeking closure. I wanted her to realize what she'd lost and that I was done pretending everything was okay. I didn't sleep that night. As I sat there, staring at the screen, I knew I had crossed a line, but honestly, I didn't care anymore. She'd pushed me to the brink, and I was going to make damn sure she understood what betrayal really costs. The game was set. Now I just had to wait for her to realize she'd lost everything: her marriage, her reputation, her peace of mind. And I was ready to make her suffer, even without laying a finger on her. That was the plan, to make her feel the sting of her own lies. That's all I wanted. The day I finally put the plan into motion felt like walking on thin ice. I had everything ready: the screenshots, the messages, the timestamps. I even drafted a message to send to her friends and family, carefully wording it so they'd see her for who she really was. I knew I was risking everything, but at that point, I didn't care about the consequences. I just wanted her to see that I wasn't some fool who'd get played and accept it silently. That morning, I woke up with a strange mix of adrenaline and nausea. My hands felt clammy and my stomach was twisted into knots. I'd never done anything like this before, but I knew it was necessary. I had to make her feel exposed, vulnerable, that she couldn't hide anymore. I sat on the edge of the bed, taking a deep breath, then got to work. First, I sent the screenshots and evidence to a few of her closest friends, people she trusted, people who would know her for what she really was. I wanted her to see that her lies couldn't be hidden forever. I explained that I'd been betrayed, that I had proof. The responses came back quickly: shock, disbelief, and a lot of anger directed at her. I could almost see her face burning with shame as I read her friends' reactions. Next, I crafted a message to her mother, her sister, anyone who might listen. I told her side of the story, laid out every detail, and included the damning evidence. I didn't hold back. This wasn't about pity or trying to be gentle. It was about showing her that her secrets were exposed, that her facade was crumbling. I hit send and watched the clock, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction mixed with dread. She was in the kitchen when I told her I sent everything out. Her face went pale, her eyes wide with terror. "You didn't," she started, but I cut her off. "Oh, I did," I said sharply. "Everyone will know what you've been doing, how you lied, cheated, and thought you could get away with it. You thought you were so clever, but you're just a liar, Sarah. And now the whole world's going to see it." Her hands trembled as she tried to speak, but nothing came out. She looked like a trapped animal, her false confidence gone. I could see the panic setting in, the realization that there was no way out now. Her entire carefully constructed world was crashing down around her, and I had no intention of stopping it. I told her, "You wanted to hide your secrets, but I made sure everyone knows. Your friends, your family, hell, maybe even your job if I decide to go that far." I paused, letting her see the intensity in my eyes. "You think you've got power? No, you lost that the moment you decided to betray me." She tried to plead, but I didn't listen. I'd already made up my mind. She could beg, she could cry, but it wouldn't matter. I was done pretending I didn't know. I was done pretending I still trusted her. That's when I told her I was leaving, that I was done with the lies and the betrayal. "Pack your bags," I said coldly. "You're going to need some time to think about what you've done." She looked at me like I was a stranger. Her lips trembled, but no words came out. I stood there feeling a strange emptiness inside, like I just snapped a part of my own soul. But at the same time, a tiny flicker of relief sparked. I finally felt like I was in control again. I grabbed my keys, turned to her, and said, "Don't try to contact me. I don't want to hear your lies anymore." That was the moment I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't let her spin her story, not now. This was the end, the final chapter of a relationship built on lies. As I stepped out the door, I could hear her shouting behind me, begging, crying, pleading. I didn't look back. My heart was pounding, my head spinning, but I walked away knowing I'd done what I had to do. The house felt huge and hollow without her there. The silence was deafening. I drove away, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and emptiness. I knew I'd shattered her world, and honestly, part of me felt a twisted sense of justice. She played me for a fool, but now she was the one left exposed, trembling. I couldn't help but wonder what she'd do next, whether she'd try to spin her way out or just accept that she'd lost everything. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity. She might have betrayed my trust, but I was still standing. and I was going to make sure she remembered that. In the end, I knew the real power was in walking away and leaving her to pick up the pieces of her own broken lies. The aftermath was a whirlwind, but honestly, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Maybe it was the adrenaline fatting, or maybe I finally felt like I'd taken back some control. Either way, I knew I'd done what I set out to do. I'd exposed her, shattered her carefully crafted illusion of innocence, and made her face the consequences of her betrayal. For a couple of days, silence was golden. I avoided her calls, ignored her texts, and let the world spin without her in it. I stayed busy, but beneath that there was a gnawing feeling, part relief, part guilt, and mostly a burning curiosity about what she would do next. I'd given her that jolt, that wake-up call, but I knew this wasn't over. Not entirely. Then one afternoon she showed up at my office. I'd been expecting her, but I didn't expect her to come so soon. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she looked genuinely defeated, like she'd been crying her eyes out. She opened the door slowly, hesitating before stepping inside. "Can we talk?" she asked softly, voice trembling. I looked up, feeling nothing but cold indifference. "What's there to talk about?" She swallowed hard and sat across from me. "I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you bad. I didn't mean for it to go this far." I crossed my arms. "You didn't mean to cheat on me with my best friend either." Her eyes darted away for a moment. "It was a mistake. I was lonely, confused. I didn't think it would get this far. I never wanted you to find out like this." I shook my head slowly. "That's the thing. What you call a mistake, I call a choice. You chose to hide, to lie, to betray everything we had. I gave you my trust and you threw it away. Honestly, I don't even know who you are anymore." She looked desperate now. "Please give me a chance to explain." "I don't want to hear it," I interrupted, voice cold and flat. "You lied, you cheated, you betrayed me. I spent months trying to hold on to what we had, and you were out there planning secret meetups, lying to my face." Her voice cracked. "I was weak. I didn't want to lose everything. You were deployed and I felt alone, and that's supposed to be an excuse." I snapped. "You could come to me. Instead, you chose to sneak around behind my back like some kind of traitor. I don't know if I can ever trust you again, not after what I saw in those messages, what you planned." She looked like she wanted to cry, but I felt nothing but a cold fury. I stood up, voice rising. "You want to talk? Fine, but I'm done. Done pretending I don't see who you really are. You can stay or go, doesn't matter anymore. Just don't come back pretending everything's fine." She looked at me, helpless, tears streaming down her face. "Please don't do this. I still love you." I took a deep breath and felt a strange emptiness inside. Love doesn't mean lying and cheating. It's about trust, something you've destroyed. I have to walk away now, or I'll end up hating myself for letting this go any further. Stay if you want, but I'm done. It's over. I turned and walked out, leaving her sitting there crying. As much as I wanted to feel guilty, I didn't. I knew I'd done what I had to do. I'd been patient, tried to salvage what was left, but she chose betrayal over us. That's her choice, her mistake. Driving home that evening, I could feel a weight lift off my chest. I'd ended it cleanly, decisively. I got rid of the false hope, the lies, the betrayal. I felt lighter, like I'd finally taken control of my life again. But I also felt the sting of loss. That's what betrayal does. It leaves you with a hollow ache, a sense that everything you believed in is just a fragile illusion. I realized that forgiveness might never come, and honestly, I didn't want it. Not yet. Not until she understood the full extent of what she'd lost. I wanted her to sit with that pain, to realize that her actions had consequences. In the days that followed, I started to rebuild. I threw myself into work, caught up with friends who supported me, and slowly but surely I began to see a future without her. The best part: no more lies, no more pretending, just a clear, honest truth. I was better off alone than with someone who played me for a fool. Looking back now, I see it as a harsh lesson, but one I needed. Trust is fragile and betrayal shatters it fast. But strength, that's what you find after you pick up the pieces and walk away. She chose her path and I chose mine. The only thing I regret is letting her see the cracks in my armor when I was vulnerable. From here on out, I swear I won't make that mistake again. The weeks that followed were a strange mix of clarity and chaos. I felt lighter, like I'd finally stripped away a heavy cloak I didn't realize I'd been dragging around. But underneath that sense of freedom sat a persistent sting. an ache that wouldn't quite go away. I kept replaying everything, questioning whether I'd gone too far, whether I might handled it differently. But deep down, I knew I'd made the right call. Betrayal doesn't deserve a second chance. I threw myself into work, into fixing my life. I avoided her calls and messages, blocking her from my mind, like shutting a door I'd been tempted to open one last time. But the truth was, I also spent a lot of time trying to understand what had gone wrong. Not because I wanted her back, but because I needed to understand how someone I loved could betray me so thoroughly. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about making peace with what I'd learned. One night, I sat on my porch with a beer, staring at the empty street. The cool breeze brushed past, carrying away some of the rawness I'd felt for so long. That's when I started to reflect on the whole ordeal and what I wanted moving forward. I realized that in some twisted way, this experience had sharpened my instincts. I could see red flags now that I'd previously ignored. I'd been naive, maybe, but I was done being a fool. Next time, I'd trust my gut instead of my heart. As I sipped my beer, I remembered a conversation I'd had with a friend shortly after everything blew up. He told me, "You gotta remember, some people aren't worth the trouble. You loved her, but she chose her own path. It's just life throwing punches. Sometimes you gotta take one and keep moving." That stuck with me. Life had thrown a punch and I'd absorbed it. I was still standing, still breathing. And that was enough for now. I knew I'd come out better on the other side, wiser, tougher. I also knew I'd never forget what she did, but I refused to carry that anger forever. It was a burden I chose to drop. But there was one last thing I needed to do, a final act of closure. I couldn't keep her lingering in my mind, wondering what she was doing or how she was feeling. I needed to physically close that chapter. So I went to her house, got the keys from her, and took one last look at the place we shared. It was strange, like walking through a ghost town. Everything was still there, untouched, waiting for her return or her final goodbye. I picked up the keys, feeling the cold metal in my hand, and decided to leave them on the kitchen counter. No big dramatic gesture, no angry tirade. Just a simple act, an acknowledgement that I was done with her, done with the lies, done with the heartbreak. I knew she'd probably try to come back or spin some story to win me over, but I'd already made my choice. As I walked out, I looked around one last time. The house felt heavy with memories, good and bad, fading into the background. I realized I didn't need this place anymore. It was time to move on, to find a new path, free from the shadows of betrayal. I opened the door, stepped outside, and let out a breath I'd been holding for too long. Walking away that night, I felt a strange sense of liberation. I had taken back my life piece by piece. I'd faced the worst and I'd survived. The pain would fade, but the lesson would stay. Trust is fragile and betrayal is a choice. I wasn't going to let someone else decide my happiness again. I was done with the past, ready for whatever came next. And honestly, that was the best revenge I could give myself. Moving forward wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my peace and knowing I deserved better. Because sometimes, the biggest victory is simply walking away and knowing you're stronger without someone who never really cared. The months that followed were a blur of trying to find my footing again. No more secrets, no more lies, just me, and the quiet that came with knowing I'd cut out the poison. I threw myself into work, into friendships I'd neglected, into the hobbies I'd pushed aside during the chaos. Slowly, the sharp edges of betrayal dulled, replaced by a sense of resolve I'd never known before. I realized something. I'd been living my life based on what I thought I owed her: trust, loyalty, fidelity. But I learned that sometimes protecting yourself means walking away from what no longer serves you. One day, I finally sat down and drafted a simple letter, nothing long, just enough to say I was done. I handed over the keys, closed the door, and turned my back on that chapter for good. It felt like shedding an old skin, making space for new beginnings. That act, small as it seemed, was the final piece of the puzzle, my way of saying, "This is over. I'm done with your lies, your betrayal, your games." As I sealed the envelope, I looked around the empty house one last time. Every corner still held echoes of the past, laughter, tears, promises. But I knew I had to leave those behind, just like I was leaving her behind. I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness, but mostly I felt lighter, freer. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe again without that weight on my chest. Walking out of the house, I took a deep breath and looked up at the sky, a clear, crisp evening. The stars were twinkling, silent witnesses to my quiet victory. I knew I'd face more hurdles ahead, more heartbreaks, maybe even more betrayals. But I'd learned that falling down isn't the end, it's just an invitation to get back up stronger. The thing I want everyone to know is this: trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep. But strength isn't about never falling, it's about how you get back up. I could let that pain consume me, but instead I chose to use it as fuel. To rebuild, to move on, to find happiness on my own terms. So here I am, standing in the aftermath, finally at peace. I don't carry her betrayal anymore. I've taken back the power I thought I lost, and I refuse to give it away again. The scars will stay, but they remind me, trust yourself enough to walk away from what tears you down. And that, honestly, is the best revenge of all.